Maui Police Chief John Peltier, who ordered victims to be trapped in the line of fire, has now been named as a co-conspirator in the Diddy case. I learned a lot the other day. I learned that our media is controlled by what's called a corporatocracy. Now, what is a corporatocracy? I think we have a slide on this. Corporatocracy is a system of government in which a corporation, group of corporations, or entities run by corporations control the direction and governance of a country, either directly or indirectly. Governments, de facto corporatocracies, are heavily influenced by corporations. Proving that a government actually is a corporatocracy likely would be difficult. So this concept is mainly discussed in the circles of critics, economists, and political analysts. So an interview with an economics hitman, this describes a little bit more about what is corporatocracy. Pay attention to this, folks, because this is controlling the truth that you're getting or not getting, or mistruths that you're getting. See, when you're listening to another podcaster, their whole job is to make the phones ring for their sponsor, okay? And that's all they have to do. So the knowledge, the wisdom, everything the podcast is putting out there is simply bait on a hook. It's not the real deal. So we're laying out the real deal, and what I'd like you to do right now is let's learn what the heck a corporatocracy is all about, because it's a word most people don't know what it means. Let's take a look.
It is one of the most ingenious scams for social manipulation ever created, and at its core, it is an invisible war against the population. Debt is the weapon used to conquer and enslave societies, and interest is its prime ammunition. And as the majority walks around oblivious to this reality, the banks, in collusion with governments and corporations, continue to perfect and expand their tactics of economic warfare, spawning new bases, such as the World Bank and International Monetary Fund, while also inventing a new type of soldier, the birth of the economic
Such a big corporatocracy is this group of individuals who run our biggest corporations, and they really act as the emperor of this empire. They control our media, either through direct ownership or advertising. They control most of our politicians because they finance their campaigns, either through their corporations or through personal contributions that come out of the corporations. They're not elected, they don't serve a limited term, they don't report to anybody. And at the very top of the corporatocracy, you really can't tell whether a person's working for a private corporation or the government because they're always moving back and forth. So, you've got a guy who one moment is the president of a big construction company like Halliburton, and the next moment he's vice president of the United States, or the president who was in the oil business. And this is true whether you've got Democrats or Republicans in the office. You have them moving back and forth through the revolving door. And in a way, our government is invisible a lot of the time, and its policies are carried out by our corporations on one level or another. And then again, the policies of the government are basically forged by the corporatocracy and then presented to the government. They become government policy. So it's an incredibly cozy relationship. This isn't a conspiracy theory type of thing. These people don't have to get together and plot to do things. They all basically work under one primary assumption, and that is that they must maximize profits regardless of the social and environmental costs.
So that's what corporatocracy is all about. Basically, corporations get together and say, hey, look, we're the big guys. Let's control it all. What does all this mean? What does all this mean? Well, see, as the interest rates come down, then the value of the bond portfolios that are out there go up. okay, because the interest rates would come down. So if you're going to invest in a bond, you're going to be earning a lower interest rate. Well, let's suppose you want a higher interest rate. Well, you could certainly offer somebody that's holding a bond at a higher interest rate more money. But the bottom line is that it's costing less and less money to borrow more and more money. And what do you think that does to the money supply? Well, it probably increases it. What do you think it does to the borrowing response, the borrowing lending criteria? Do you think it's been loosened or do you think it's been tightened? I think it's been loosened, absolutely. Now, if they're going to loosen up this, do you think this is called quantitative easing, where they're easing the money out of the spigots? Or do you think it's quantitative tightening, where they're tightening the spigot? No, they're issuing lots and lots of new currency. They're issuing by lowering the interest rates. So by lowering the interest rates, it's basically rocket fuel. And how do we make sure that none of this is ever corrupted? Well, we put something in there called the in terrorem clause. Attorneys hate this. You better write it down because you're never going to hear it anywhere else. The in terrorem clause basically says anyone chooses to challenge the terms of your trust automatically disinherited. Now, some people said, well, I struck up a will and I put in a no contest clause. It doesn't work. If Europe seizes Russian FX or foreign reserves, it would immediately reset the global financial system. This is important. Yesterday saw the Nikkei down 2.2, the DAX down 1.7, the S&P down 2.7, and so on and so forth. As the headlines put it, markets were swooning first on China drifting back to deflation, then on President Trump's comments that refused to rule out a U.S. recession. Frankly, that commentary managed to be both very shallow and deeply myopic at the same time. China is struggling with deflation due to mercantilism. An economy that must grow at 5% and via more supply, not demand, necessarily makes too much, exports it, and dominates global supply chains. Many Western economies could do that right now, as Trump has implied. He made clear he wants to reset the U.S. and by extension, the global economy. I hate to predict things like this. There's a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. Let me encapsulate what we're talking about here. So you got a whole bunch of people that have been doing nothing really to generate any kind of positive economic activity. Government employees. Government is basically a tick. They're sucking the lifeblood out of us. So we are the animal, and you got all these ticks. Not supposed to be that many of us, but apparently we had 10% of our body covered with these ticks, just sucking the lifeblood out of us, supposedly. But it turns out those are just the ones working. There's a whole lot of people that are sucking blood out of us that are dead. So what's happening right now is we've got all these dollars going out, and there's no purchasing power going back in. It's inflation is what we're looking at. So the dollar is dying. Now, in order to retrain these people that have been working for the government, it's going to take a little while. Now, granted, you and I probably know how to put a nut on a bolt and tighten it up. Well, some of these people don't, but they got to get back to work, and we're going to have them working in factories making the stuff that we used to buy from China, from the stores like Walmart, Kmart. When I came here, we talked about that yesterday, but Home Depot, these stores. So there's not going to be any labor arbitrage anymore. See, when we go to a level playing field, you're not going to be able to take goods, raw materials from around the world, ship them someplace else, ship them halfway back around the world, unload the containers and populate the stores with merchandise and expect to make a profit. No, it's only because the labor has been absolutely free. And who has been providing that labor? If you've been paying attention, it's been the Uyghurs. The Uyghurs were moved out of China. Now what's happening, all these foreigners are being repatriated and brought back to their homes. Well, Uyghurs haven't been around their homes for 20, 30 years. Where is their home? It's been bulldozed down, a parking lot made out of it? I don't know. Do you? So that's what's happening right now. We got to get these people back to their homes, and we have to get the people that weren't used to doing anything legitimate trained to do something legitimate, even as it's putting a nut on a bolt. Well, you're going to see, we're going to start making all our own stuff over here anymore. But since we don't have factories, our factories be the latest and greatest, the most environmentally friendly, the latest, greatest in terms of the amount of energy it has to use and the products brought out. So one of the reasons that Japan had such a resurgence after World War II is because we rebuilt Japan. That's what we did. And what did we wind up doing? They wound up taking over our car industry because they made fabulous steel. And we wound up, who decided this, to get rid of all our steel manufacturing plants, steel places where we actually burned the coal and all that kind of jazz. Why would you do that? Anyway.
I got to go. This is amazing. I need to have you back on really soon, Mike. But really quickly, if you can tell me in 15 or 20 seconds, has every past president for the last 20 years known about this corruption with USAID and just chose not to do anything about it?
Well, most of them are on the take. Joe Biden was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, which directly oversees USAID. USAID was funding Burisma. USAID gave money to Burisma and had a formal partnership agreement with Burisma. Barack Obama's mother worked for USAID. The Bush family runs right through it. Bush's, Vice President Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney worked for USAID. They're all in on it. And this is the reason that the Trump revolution was so revolutionary. It's because it defeated both sides of the USAID snake. And now we're going to see just exactly how the snake bites back when it's cornered.
I wonder if all of the lawfare and the everything that they threw at President Trump in his first term, the Russiagate, the collusion, all the stuff. I wonder if that was just to try to keep him on his heels enough to not look at USAID. But
wait, but that was a USAID thing
Mike
too.
Vince, appreciate you.
Can I say this one thing real quick? No, I have to say this.
Yes.
Okay. USAID funded a group called the OCCRP. Everyone can look this up. They paid $20 million to a group of hit piece journalists who turned around and dug up dirt on Rudy Giuliani and then used that as the basis to impeach the sitting president, Donald Trump, in 2019.
Folks, truth is not free and it's not easily promulgated. That's what we're discussing right now, and that's what the problems that we're having. Because if everyone knew the truth, they'd be able to make the right decisions. The right decisions right now is exchange the worthless fiat currency notes that we're currently being forced to use through the Bank of International Settlements, through the Federal Reserve Bank. Exchange them for the real coin of the realm, the money of our country.
Are mad at people who have found wasted taxpayer money, but they're not mad at the people who are wasting it. They decided to support the wasteful spending and the bureaucracy over the taxpayer and seem determined to find out what it's like to be a Jets fan and lose every week.